So, starting the second turn here at Minorca, and we may be able to finish the battle up on this video. I just wanted to do a lot of detail on that first one, although I may have some spots in where I want to zoom in and watch a ship do a kind of strange maneuver or something as it's happening. But for the most part, I'm going to take the higher view at this point. I've ended up assigning the command splits, trying to keep a lot of flexibility at the front of my formation. I like doing that because that's the part in a situation like this where we're running alongside where the engagement is happening. So I don't want as many ships. I don't want to have to deal with this ship when I'm trying to actually engage. And this is the final ship in, say, the British formation. The same situation with the French. I've divided it up into their 3 sets, trying to front load at as little as possible. Quick initiative die roll. The French have won it. Remember, the leadership's the same, so audacity doesn't come into play here. And I think we want to receive here, essentially. I think we want to launch the first attack, as it were. You could say, well, gee, that's not exactly right. Well, I'm not a football person anyway, but to me, in this case, that's what it makes, as opposed to punting. It feels like I'm taking the offensive here. All right, so we're going to open up with these guys, and I'll show you kind of what happens as it happens. I shouldn't have talked so quickly. I've started moving this ship. I think it was here. Actually, I think it was here. 1, 2, like this. 1, 2, 3 movement, which I indicated with that just as a temporary reminder, mainly because I'm on video, and I see I'm getting a rake lined up here. Oh, that's actually 4 because I turned into beating. I think I want to make my 5th movement because here I think I'm not getting a full broadside. Let me look at the rules for full broadside. This is the kind of thing that isn't intuitive to me. It's new to me to this game, but that just doesn't look like it should be a full broadside, but I don't understand how that works entirely. So if only one of the larger target ship's hexes is in the firing, no, everything's in the firing arc, so I can do it from here. I don't have to take that last move, which means I can take a free turn after I fire. Of course, I could do that anyway. I could spend my 5th move fire, but now I'm firing. That allows a defensive fire opportunity. I've got these running guns in play, which I believe I'm allowed to use, if I can find them. And yes, this is all just, not being used to the system. Chase guns. It's a single die, the range between the 2 vessels. So I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes. And if I get greater than or equal to the range, I get a rigging hit. This die roll is modified by the audacity of the firing ship and any firing modifiers due to initiative. Well, the audacity is going to be 1. That's what the British audacity is here. So I get a 2. I didn't get any hit on them. Right? Yeah. Okay. But now I want to fire with the French ship. I've been doing rigging shooting. I'm not sure that's what I want to do anymore with this rake in place. But I'm firing up against the wind, maybe raking the British ships, knocking more of them out of the battle makes sense, or hitting the British ships' rigging makes sense, so I guess I'll go with it. So I'm at range 4. We're again firing our port broadside. This time we're not going to get any bonus other than the rake. Doesn't look like I have any penalties on me. What about my firepower rating? Well, I should figure out what that is first. 4 at range 4 says I have a base of 5. Now, I remembered this being kind of helpful, keeping track of the number of modifiers on the die until I get used to it. No attacker's audacity, no point blank fire, no cumulative carronade bonus. I don't know what the rule is on that yet. What about a rake, though? What happens if I have a rake? Is it nothing on... Let's look at rakes again. Yeah, it's just hull damage. You know, I think I want to do hull... Oh, God. Let's see if I get the rake, because I don't have to declare what I'm doing if I don't know it yet. So no audacity, no commander quality on this ship. Range to target is 4 hexes, so I got +4. I need a 0 to have a successful rake at that range. I'm not going to get one, so I'm going to go for the rigging fire. Which is kind of weird because I should have to choose that earlier. Let me see what the order is here. Target type selection. Yeah, I have to choose before the roll. I guess I would have chosen rigging anyway, given the low odds of the rank. The reason that makes sense, that you have to choose first, is you have to load your guns with chain if you're firing at the rigging. You can't just fire balls through the rigging. That'll do almost nothing. So there's some time involved in making that decision. So that all works pretty well. So what were we at? We're at a 5, if this is correct still. And it's French. Okay, so we're going to be at the 5 table, but this is our die roll modifiers. +1, +2, firing into the wind. Looks like nothing else. So +2 on the 5 table. Not as good as last roll, but I get a hell of a roll. 11 says 3 rigging. So I'll use this, and that has an indication that there's going to be -1 to the movement for that ship. And I've used 4 of my movement points. I get to use a 5th one. And I'm going to take that. I could back sails here rather than closing the distance, but I'm okay with closing the distance at this point. And yeah, if we're going to zoom in like that, we're going to have a lot of, we're going to eat up a lot of video. But that's okay. It's good to see the battle as it plays out. And here you see the second ship also moved up and opened fire. Now, I haven't done any defensive fire yet. You might say, why? Well, because the English think that they're going to cut in and get really close and get some hammering hard hits on the French ships by holding their fire. I'm not feeling very Bing-like here. I'm feeling more Isaac Hull. But yeah, there is a definite advantage to holding your fire and getting a really hammering shot. The French, on the other hand, are trying to do the rigging fire. That doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't start it at a distance. I'm trying to knock a couple of those English ships out of being able to move. Didn't get a terribly good result here. The third French ship slid behind, again going for that double depth in order to handle that attempt to push through and break the English or the French line. Now it's going to be the English turn to move. And well, I'm going to have to check to see if, I've been checking, but I have to check again to see if my computer is freed up so that I can actually work again. One of those observations that I like to make, you know, you have to remember great battles of history. This was one of my viewers mentioned that this isn't too much more difficult than great battles of history in terms of fiddliness aspect. And I totally don't mind the little counters on it. What I mind is the thinking involved in positioning the ships. But I'll tell you this much. Great battles of history I did not enjoy as much playing it opposed as I do solo. And I think I may be feeling the same way about this, that this may be a more enjoyable game for me solo. Now that doesn't, you know, I mean, people play Great Battles of History opposed, I'm sure, all the time, and I've seen people playing this opposed. It's just, the kind of thinking and maybe my competitive nature makes trying to figure out where I can move effectively in this very, very painful. Where I'd rather actually play the plotted movement in an opposed game, but there's some advantages to. First of all, I don't have to plot my movement, which is difficult in a solo game. But also, there's some advantages in terms of just not having to deal with an opponent when you're playing something that requires a lot of individual thought on a per element basis. Without that distraction, I can kind of play it by I can wing the game in a much more comfortable sort of version. I don't feel like I'm screwing up both my and my opponent. My chances of winning in my opponent's game by playing stupidly somehow. Let's jump to the lead English column, if you want to call them that. I don't know, command. And here, the very first ship has an interesting situation. First of all, it's got damage on it. It's running, so it only has a base of 4 movement points, and it loses another one due to the damage to the rigging. So it's only going to have a total of 3 movement points. 1. No chance of defensive fire here. There is back here, but I'm going to hold that. 2. Shift. 3. Now, I want to shoot here, but before I do, I get normal defensive fire with this. This is actually on the rake line. Hard call there. Range is 3. Let's look at the rake table and see how the... And this is how it goes. The English declare their shot, but the French get the chance to intervene in that. So this is going to be... let's see what the rake is going to be. It's at a range of 3, which means I'm going to need a 1 to be able to get a hull damage on it. I'm going to continue going with rigging damage. How much rigging damage do I need to completely to dismast this thing? I think it was like 15. Yeah, 15 rigging hits. That's minus 5 movement. That means it couldn't possibly move no matter how it was in the wind. However, if I can significantly reduce its movement, and 1 more hit does some. So this is going to be a first broadside from the Resolution. I'll mark that here, or no, not Resolution, is it? I can't read. Redoubtable. And that'll be another port broadside. I'm marking them down on this sheet rather than use my special. Now we have some differences here because we have an admiral on board. This ship's already moved, so I'm going to put its port out here just to remind me. Okay. So I don't have to worry about the rake roll here. I'm loaded for a rigging shot. I am a 4 size, oh no, I'm a 3 size ship with a white background. Now the white background will affect me if I'm in close range. So a 3 at range 1, 2, 3, that's an 8 base firepower. Nothing here is in play. But I'm going to get to add 1 to that firepower based on my rate, being in a white circle and being in that special area. I have no audacity, no point blank fire. It is my initial broadside. That puts me up to an 11. And I don't get to add my commander into this. He gets added elsewhere. Okay. So we're going to be at an 11 on rigging. Plus 2. Don't I get the commander somewhere in here? I guess not. He would get an advantage on getting the rake. If firing out and out. Alright. So I guess I'm just at plus 2 on the 11. And I roll a 0. goes out to a 2. That's 2 more rigging hits and a hull hit. So there's the hull hit. I'm allowed to take 8 of them. 2 more rigging puts me up to a 7, which is going to further decrease the movement. Now this guy used up all his movement. And now he gets to launch his fire on rakes against both of these. And we're going to see if he gets those rakes. Let's try to see partial broadside again. No, I've got both hexes. See, I keep thinking that it's got something to do with my ship. It doesn't. It has to do with the hexes that large ship, that my target is sitting in. Okay. So, we get to play the raking game. Let's go for the hull, for the stern rake first. And Audacity gives us a -1 to the die roll. Stern rake gives us -3 total. Range to target is 1, so we're at -2. Remember, I can be in the same hex, but I couldn't do that here because I didn't have enough movement to get out of that hex. So I'm at a -2 on the rake table. I only get a 5. That means I'm not going to have outmaneuvered that ship in order to get the rake. Okay. What is the name of my ship? It's the Defiance B. I removed the B here because that's just an informational to distinguish between the counters. Oh, well, we're going to be firing both. So I'll mark them down like that. Okay. My size is a 4. At range 1 means I've got a base of 10 to start with. However, I have some hull hits, not enough to cause any damage. My firepower is a normal type, so no advantage there. I get +1 to my base firepower, so I'm at 11. It's not point blank, I'm not in the same hex. But it is an initial broadside, so I'm at 13. Oops. $13. And this is going to be a hull shot, so I'll be using this column instead. It's a British ship, so +1. Firing with the wind. Shit, I don't know. Let's see how that modifier is. See, that modifier is not directly defined anywhere. I'm going to say it's going this way. This isn't really with the wind in either direction. It has to be aiming a little bit more, so I'm not going to give them that. So I've got a +1 to the die roll. And I'll be doubling all hull damage. No, I didn't get a stern rake. Okay. So, I'm at +1 on the 13 table. +1 gives me a 2. Big D10 can do a lot here. It's going to be 2 hull and a rigging. So I get 2 hull and a rigging on this one. And yes, there are a lot of counters in this game. There's a reason you might want to track this on paper, but I find seeing the ship's damage level right on the board a lot easier to cope with. Now likewise, we have this possible bow rake here, and we'll check that as well. -1 for Audacity, +1 range to target. I need a 4 or less. I get it this time, so I've got a bow rake going on. I'm firing both broadsides. Oh, I think I may have forgotten my first fire, didn't I? No, I don't think so. Okay, nothing's going to go on here. So I'm again a 4 at range 1 is a base of 10. My Audacity brings it to 11, 12, 13 for point blank. Yeah, I think I forgot it. Or no, 12, 13 for initial broadside, not point blank. So yes, I'm at 13. I have a rake this time, so the big difference here is I'll be doing 50% more hull damage. And I've got a +1 to the die roll. And it's really the same as last time. So I get a total of 3 this time. Slightly different table. I'm going to cause 3 hull Okay, plus 50%. Do you round down? I don't know. I'm going to say 4 hull hits there. I'll look it up to make sure I'm correct in a moment. But that's what we've got there. The rest of the English command vanguard moved forward. We had one more firing here at range 2. Some more hits. Got him down to 5 hits on his hull. Hull hits are probably more important. That's why you don't really like going for rigging. But if you can slow down a significant portion of the fleet, then you can isolate that portion, go after the more maneuverable stuff. Remember, the French goal here isn't necessarily... They can withdraw from the map without creating a victory point loss. So if they get away, that's not so terrible. If the British portion of the fleet chases them, well, then maybe they can take that on and defeat it in detail before going back to the ships that they've knocked the rigging off of. All right, now we're back on the French next command over here, and you can see by moving these, generally you can keep a pretty good track of what's going on. But once the battle gets chaotic, it becomes a lot more difficult to remember what you've moved and what you haven't. I wish there were little move markers, but there simply are not. Anything that could work as that. I could use little anchors or something, you know, to try to mark that in some sense, or blank counters if it gets too confusing. Outside of the little area where there was an engagement, the rest is just the fleets moving in column, getting closer and closer. So we move to turn 3 on our turn record track, and we'll slide into that turn. These battles often develop this way. It's a running situation where both sides are approaching each other, essentially, not as straight lines or anything like that, but in columns running parallel. So they're going to engage at where they head together. Another option, of course, would be for the British to have swung around and approached in the line. That would have put the French at something of a disadvantage in a sense, because they can't simply turn and face, but it gives them the advantage of they're facing their broadsides to the angle of attack that the Brits are using. So attacking in a line of battle like that, although it has some advantages, certainly Nelson did it at Trafalgar, in general doesn't seem like it's a good idea. Right, same principle of command split as we had before. Try to keep the forward elements as small as possible. And initiative this time goes to the English. They'll probably choose to move their van. There's an advantage to moving first in general. Uh-oh, I forgot and left all these in place. I'm gonna remove them. But we'll see. With the defensive fire, it may be less of an advantage than you think, but you get to control the action by gaining your own rakes, essentially, if you're in the position to do that. Now, I've got a problem with this. These 3 ships are in this command. This one's not. He's not facing the right direction. He's an out-of-command ship temporarily. Now, I have to worry about that. There's a chance that I get him in command still. So I have to roll less than or equal to the audacity of 1, but I get to subtract my overall commanders minus 2 from that. So I need a 3 or less, or else he's out of command. Now, being out of command in this situation isn't that terrible, because I'm already adjacent to enemy ships, so I'm allowed to fire. I'm not allowed to move adjacent to another ship, so I won't be able to make a quick attack on this one, but that's okay. And I am indeed going to be out of command. Puts a few restrictions on what I can do with that ship. Okay, I've chosen to move that out of command ship first because I may want to send another ship through that hole if I can, or through a hole. He's moved 1 hex, and I think turn, maybe not, He's moved one hex. He's firing both his broadsides. Now, this is important. I had a rake on this one. Am I allowed to get another rake? I know that in the same... I don't know if it's the same activation. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So let's take a look at the rake rules. I know there's a restriction against getting a second rake if you're still on the command line, if you haven't passed completely through the rake line. Rake limits. If a ship successfully performs a rake, it must completely exit the rake line and re-enter it to rake the same target again during the same activation. So yes, I will be allowed to rake both of these again. That has almost a minimal effect, since I basically have to tack or something in order to get my guns into position for a second rake. In this case, somehow I've got a shot at getting that rake again. Alright, I'm going to take care of this off camera just because we've seen what the combat rolls can be like. An interesting situation. I was on the 11 table. I ended up getting 3 hull and a rigging. I've marked the rigging, but the hull is doubled for this. So that's going to put me to 11. Now this ship has a damage rating of 10. So 10 of that 11 is used to flip this over, and I end up with a single point left. So now my rate has been reduced, as has my manpower and the amount of damage that it takes to sink me, and this, that, and the other. So all these values are a little different now. I did not get a bow rake here. I haven't rolled the damage for that yet. We'll see. But this was a successful effort. Now on this one I got 3 more hits, which put it over the 6. That -1 in there is to indicate that the relative rate of these ships is to be considered different. Based on... It's 1 less based on the hull damage that it's taken. So that's already accounted for on the opposite side of this ship. The break-off points may not be exact, but it essentially covers that to a large extent. So now both of these ships are going to be firing at a worse rate than they would have otherwise. They could not fire defensive fire off at these ships. They could the only defensive fire that could be fired was at this one. I chose not to do it with this French ship. I think I can get a better shot on that poor thing, which is doing a lot of damage actually. This here I'm using just to indicate that I moved 1 movement point. I like to have some kind of indicator of that, and I don't want a lot of dice on the table. I use them for the numberings and etc. So that's just my mnemonic for remembering, you know, where I am in terms of my movement. Second movement point was used to slam into this hex. Now I could have done my rake at this, my attack at this point, and I would have gotten the point blank range fire. My mistake for not doing that. Now I'm at 2 movement points actually. I'm only gonna get, I had 5 base, but I'm down 2, so I'm only gonna get another movement point, but that allows me to slide to here. Now the French are pretty sure that they will be able to cut that. At this point, the French do not have to move if they don't want to. They can force the English to take another move because this was just an out-of-command ship. However, they want to take the move because they want to slice this and turn up and maybe hit some of these other lead ships and make the English pay a little bit for this body blow that they've dealt to a couple of the lead French ships. Here I want to highlight a move where this French ship wants to cross the T of this English ship. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be getting a full 5 movement points here. But I don't want to move into this hex because I'll have a closer range if I do not. So I'm going to back sails for my first movement point allowance. I'm allowed to do that, remember, once at a time, I believe. And then that'll allow me to take a wear. Now I'm only allowed to use 2 of my movement points to back sails here. I've got to go a significant amount of my movement, but then I can turn this way and that cost me 2 more movement points. So now I've just spent 1 for backing sails, 3, I had 5. Now at this point, this ship could do defensive fire on me. Because remember, I'm playing with the optional rule that allows that. I could let him move another space though. So he's going to go to 4 spaces, and now the Portland is going to fire. I'm going to put this 4 rigging here to indicate that. Why does this have so many rigging hits on it? And the Portland, if I check over here, it's already fired its starboard guns. I will still get a move with the Portland. This may not be my best shot, but I want to get my shot off at this point simply because I'm afraid that I'm going to get my bow crossed. And this is a nice factor over fighting sail, because in that game you can't stop someone doing an opportunity fire. In this one you really can't either, but at least you, with the basic rules, but at least you can do the defensive fire just before they shoot at you. But in this case, I'm playing with the option, and I think it works a lot better. So now I'll figure out that fire, and then the French will continue crossing the T and opening fire there. The effect of that engagement with the weakened French ship, it didn't work out too well for the French. They didn't get their rake, and I mean, they're lined up for it, but they didn't get the die roll for it. So they ended up only causing 1 hull hit, and they're kind of getting smashed up. The lead British ship that had caused quite a bit of damage to the French, that's getting cut across by this very heavy ship. I don't remember which one this is. The Redoubtable. Did I screw up with it? No, it's already fired its port broadsides before. So this is not a first fire. On its first movement point, now I kind of screwed up with it in the sense that I probably could have arranged that I could have gotten point blank fire on that port thing. That thing's fired its guns already, so there's no risk. And there's something kind of nice about that, because one of the things you know about these engagements between sailing ships is quite often they waited till the enemy fired their guns and then took advantage moving in closer for the moment while they're reloading. Well, that's what we've got right here. This is fired both sides, so I can shoot it up kind of at will. Of course, some of its buddies can help protect it, but it can't do much on its own. Anyway, it's caught on fire, which means at the end of the turn, it's going to have to start making additional rolls. I may not want to keep pumping fire into it. I may want to work on some of these other ships, because that may just be a lost cause at this point. In which case, well, maybe I want to start turning and moving up into position to deal with the rest of the British line. I managed to get a successful stern rake on this guy. What I forgot about was all of these ships have the chaser guns. So I rolled for them, and each of the French ships has taken a rigging hit because of that. I chose to hold off and not fire. This was a first fire with an aft rake at range 1. That's as close as I could get with this one. -1 penalty for his hull hits, though some of his guns have been destroyed. I chose not to fire at this. If I had shot at, and this chose not to fire defensive fire, if I shot at this, I'm going to get a better opportunity when it moves. That's basically how I see it. If it breaks away and moves away, I can shoot at it then too with defensive fire. So I've got no real problem there. So we're moving the turn over to the British side at this point, and they'll get to move. Presumably they're going to want to move their front squadron of only 2 ships, because that gets them out of the way of these guys. Alternatively, though, I could break the rear squadron and try to take advantage of, say, the position the Sage is in, because things aren't going to change over here. We'll see if I remember that after I come back. Let's look at this situation I was considering, which is moving this ship and the rest of this command, but this ship in particular. I'd have to open up with a aware, I think. I might be able to slip in front of here. What I was thinking was something else, but let's say I move here. 1, 2, 3, 4 because of the wind change. 5, I'm not going to get in there. I was looking at cutting across the aft here, but I'd have to open up with either backing sail, which would probably be the best. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That doesn't look good at all. Yes, I could shift back in for no cost and get a fire, but I'd be taking shots right into my bow that way. So I'm going to end up moving these guys first and take advantage of the friendships here. Now, one of the problems is it becomes, as these counters pile up, it becomes very hard to figure out who owns what. You got to kind of remember, these guys are French, these guys are British, but there's so many counters on top, it does become difficult. Now, that's why some players will use the record sheet instead. It's also why another reason to use the record sheet is if you're going to use minis. I've seen some people play this with minis, which is very pretty. And, you know, if the counters are just too big a challenge for you, minis is a really nice option if you have enough ships to cover it. It wouldn't take many. You could actually do what I did with my airplanes and build them out of paper mache. They could fit on this map even. It'd be very pretty. Okay, but I can see the color of the ships if I look carefully. So, you know, it's really not that big a deal, but it does detract a little bit from the visual aspect of the game. To move the lead Brits first. Of course, things are going to go over to the French again. We'll probably move this central command here. Both passed by this and got attempted rakes. Neither one succeeded, but they pummeled the hell out of it. 3 rigging hits, those are just incidental, but 7 hits on its damage side. One more hit, and this thing starts to look like it's going to sink. It also is now vulnerable to striking, and we have to look that up. So what is the effect there? A ship's vulnerable when it's damaged. When does this happen? I think it happens at the moment you're shot at. Yeah. Okay, so I have 1 hull hit remaining. So the modified die roll would be 4 or more normally. Now it's going to go up to 5 because I have a hull hit. The audacity and command quality of the highest ranking commander. Well, the highest ranking commander is -2, so that puts it to a 3. It's the highest ranking on the fleet, right? Not just on that ship. Okay, so we have to roll. It does not strike yet, but as more fire comes in or whatever it may, at least that's what my guess is here as to that. Maybe the sequence of play tells me something more. Yeah, striking should be happening during the ship's status check, not at this point. Oh well. I guess I'll recheck at that point because I probably won't remember. I'm going to shift this forward to remind me that those guys have moved. This is the remaining British formation, 2 French formation. Okay, and here we are finishing up turn 3. Push this down. There's a little bit of cleanup to do in terms of the broadsides fired, etc. We also, though, have to worry about striking, the ship's fire, and the like. So I guess we have to try to find where those are covered, which seems to be in here, which is actually the damage effects table, but it all kind of gets pasted together here. Unfortunately, I have to flip back and forth between, although I have 2 rule books. Ship's fire is first, just to see the order. And let's see. So we check the status by rolling on the fire table. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any modifiers to that. So let's see what happens to the English ship. 1, the fire is going to be extinguished, and we get to get rid of that. We can also get rid of the auto command. We don't know for sure if that's going to be in effect. For striking, well, you know, I checked before. I'm going to let that stand for now, just to avoid having to make the check again. I'm never sure what to do in circumstances like that where I jump the gun on something. If it had struck, I probably would have left it stand or waited until now to leave it stand. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to send this one up again. Try to keep these a little shorter. Just as a matter of, I don't know. I think shorter videos are easier to cope with. Although it does create huge lists of videos over on Board Game Geek. But such is.